This happened during my early 20s. I used to live in a small home with a group of 3 other guys. We all didn't really know each other before moving in together, but we had gone to the same college and graduated at the same time. So with all of us looking for somewhere to live afterward, it all just kind of fell into place. Splitting the rent 4 ways, we were able to afford a relatively small house on the more rural outskirts of the city. Everything closer was a bit too expensive. All went well for the first 9-ish months, but pretty suddenly, 2 of the guys decided to move out, leaving just me and KJ. Unfortunately, KJ was the only one of the 3 that I didn't really talk to that much. He was always working, or getting home late, or just not wanting to hang out with the rest of us, so it kinda sucked that it was the other 2 that left. It also meant we had to pay double between each of us. This wasn't something we could keep up, and agreed that at the end of the lease in 3 months, we would go our separate ways and leave the house. For the first month after the 2 left, it became really apparent how absent KJ was. On my days off, I was often at home just chilling all day and night by myself, which was very different from when the other 2 lived here. I didn't care too much. If anything, it was great having the place all alone, but I did think it was odd he was out for so long all the time. He only worked part-time in the mornings, but I figured he must have been out with friends all night every night. However, one night I happened to stay up a little later than usual. I was sitting in my room, and it was maybe about 1 a.m. when I saw headlights shine through my window, pulling down the gravel driveway. When I heard the front door open, I got up and for some reason felt like saying hi, just to keep things from getting too distant and awkward between us. I opened my bedroom door, but was kind of startled as I heard his footsteps begin rushing down the hallway. When I stuck my head out, he jumped, like I'd caught him in the act of something. The lights were off in the hallway, so I couldn't see him too well, but I could see that his eyes were wide and his body was frozen just outside of his bedroom door. "What's up, KJ? Just seeing how you're doing," I said to break the silence. The way he just stood there in the dark hallway with his wide open eyes and looked at me was kind of chilling. "I'm good." There were another few seconds of silence before I just nodded and stepped back into my room. Well, that definitely didn't help make things any less awkward between us. Why was he acting so strange, hurrying to his room and all? I didn't want to be nosy, but it kinda had me concerned. After a couple minutes, I opened my door carefully and quietly walked down the hallway. I just wanted to listen for a second as I passed by his room, and nothing more. But when I did, I heard him moving around frantically, like he was opening and closing drawers chaotically. It was so odd that I stopped walking for a second and leaned a bit closer to his door. The chaos continued, making me feel really uneasy, until it suddenly went quiet. Everything stopped, like he just froze. As the seconds started to go by, I got increasingly more uneasy and wanted to get out of that hallway. But before I could even move, the door suddenly swung open. KJ stood in the doorway with the same wide open eyes as before, staring right at me. In an effort to cover for myself, I said I was just heading to the kitchen and asked if he wanted anything. KJ quietly muttered no, then closed the door on me. It was honestly really creepy and only made me feel more like something was going on with him. I went into the kitchen to follow through with what I said, then went back to my room. He was quiet for the rest of the night. For the next probably 5 or 6 days, I found myself more attentive to what KJ was up to. I'd stay up until he got home, always feeling too uncomfortable to sleep until I knew he was in his room and up to nothing. During those days, he remained in that disturbing, almost zombie-like state that he was in that one night. His eyes grew increasingly more restless every day, and he spoke no more than a couple words, always hurrying into his room. Until one night after he got home, and as I was in bed trying to sleep, a knock came from the other side of my door. It scared me. I never heard him walk down the hallway to my room. I got up and opened the door. He had that same look with restless eyes, but had a partial smile as well. He mentioned that he just got home and thought he dropped his wallet somewhere out in the driveway as he was walking up to the door, asking if I had a flashlight and would help him find it real quick. I found it strange, like he'd never asked anyone for help before, or really to do anything with him. Although I thought it was odd and I was tired, I thought maybe this was a chance to make things better, so I grabbed a flashlight and followed him out to the driveway. He started up some small talk, just asking about work and stuff, as we started walking on the gravel and looking around. I noticed almost right away that his car was parked really far down the driveway though, like all the way at the end, for seemingly no reason. So if he walked all this way, we had to do the same to look for his wallet. We got all the way down to his car, and I never spotted anything on the ground, but then he started leading me away from the car. I was still shining the light around, but realizing there was no reason his wallet should be way out here away from the driveway, I asked what we were doing. KJ took a few seconds to respond, like he was thinking, before saying he went for a short walk out here earlier, so he could have dropped it. But I didn't really believe him. He kept trying to lead me further from the driveway and deeper into the woods. Every time I said we should turn back, he would repeatedly try to convince me otherwise. It got really suspicious really fast. I felt my nerves building up. Here, you could take the flashlight. I'm gonna head back to the house. I gotta be up early for work tomorrow anyway, I said as I tried to hand over the flashlight to him and make my exit. He didn't take it though. His clearly fake smile faded, and his restless eyes looked more than disappointed. He looked angry. He didn't respond, but the tension was making me really uneasy. After a few seconds, I turned around and started quickly walking away from the woods. I looked back a couple times, seeing KJ just standing there and watching me. As soon as I got to the house, I started packing. I didn't know what that was, but I didn't feel safe with him at all. I didn't sleep the whole night, listening to make sure KJ wasn't up to anything else. But he never came back to the house that night. In the morning, I got everything important stashed into my car and left. Even years later, I never heard anything from KJ or figured out what was going on. His behavior wasn't normal, and I honestly think he was planning to do something horrible in the woods that night. For 2 years, I lived with my college roommate, Jason, in a small house near the campus we used to go to. Despite having been roommates at college for a year before this, we still weren't the closest of friends or anything. We just both had similar plans for after college, so moving in together made sense for the time being. The first year or so went really well. We got a lot closer and enjoyed living together enough to renew the lease for another year. This happened in June, 2 months after renewing the lease. After a normal late night at work, I got home and talked to Jason for a while. Then we both called it a night and went to bed. However, in the middle of the night, I woke up to the floorboards creaking in the hallway. They were walking slowly, going toward the main area of the house. I rolled over and looked at the clock, seeing it was 3 a.m. I thought Jason was just getting some water or something. I don't know. At the moment, I didn't care either, and just went back to sleep. In the morning, I had to go to work early, so I was kind of rushing to leave, but Jason opened his door, looking tired, and asked me something I wasn't expecting. He asked what I was doing walking around the house in the middle of the night. I was immediately taken aback. I said I wasn't, but had thought I heard him walking around. The conversation basically ended at that though, with both of us confused at what we both heard, because I had to leave for work. Honestly, I thought our floors or walls must have just been creaking from the wind hitting the house or something, if it really wasn't Jason. When I got back home, Jason was at work, so I spent most of the night just chilling in my room, and eventually, around the same time as last night, I went to bed. But then again, I woke up around the same time to the floorboards making that same creaking sound. This time, rather than going right back to sleep, I tried to listen more carefully. It sounded exactly like someone slowly walking through the hallway and into the living room. Once they got to the other side of the house, I couldn't hear anything for about 30 seconds and decided to get up and check on it. I opened my door and walked down to the living room, but Jason wasn't in there. As far as I could tell, there was nothing there that could explain what I heard. I went back to my room and went to sleep. What I found so strange about it was that the sound moved through the house. Like if it was just the home creaking, why did it slowly go across the house like that? I mentioned it to Jason in the morning, and neither of us could come up with any ideas. Jason was off this day, but at 2 I had to go to work. I didn't make it back to the house until nearly 11. When I did and walked down the hallway to my room, I was surprised to see Jason still up. I just saw him in the corner of my eye, sitting on the bed in his room as I passed by the doorway. I called out "What's up" as I went over to my room, but Jason didn't respond. I thought it was kinda weird, but maybe he just didn't hear me, so I continued into my room. I took off my work uniform and put on some regular clothes. I left my room to go to the kitchen and get some food, but I noticed Jason's light was off in his room now. When I passed by, I looked in just to see if he was good. He was still sitting on his bed in the corner, now just in the dark, so I could barely see him. "Hey, what's up, Jason? You alright?" I called out. After a few seconds of him not responding, I just left the doorway and went to the kitchen. This was definitely weird, but I didn't know what else to do. Obviously, I wasn't going to just march into his room for no reason, just so he'd respond to me. But it did seem really odd he didn't at least just say hi or whatever. I was in the kitchen for maybe 15 minutes, then headed back to my room. Jason's door was closed when I passed by. For a whole hour, I stayed in my room, but then I heard that sound. The floorboards creaking right in the hallway. I looked over, and suddenly something moved under the door. I listened to the creaking continue, but with my last couple interactions with Jason being weird, I figured I would just text him this time to ask if it was him walking around. I waited a couple minutes, then I finally got a response. Jason sent me a question mark, then followed up with, "What do you mean? I'm not home right now." My face went pale, and my eyes shot over to the door. I got up and hurried into the hallway. No one was there, but the door to Jason's room was now open again. I quietly stood there and listened, but didn't hear anything. I walked over and peered through the doorway. Standing in the center of the pitch-black room was an unknown man. Even in the dark, now that he was closer and standing up facing me, I could tell he was taller and had a thick beard, two distinct features different from Jason that I couldn't see before. Without any more hesitation, I ran out of the house. I called the police immediately, standing on the other side of the road. When they got there, whoever that guy was gone. Strangely, there were no signs of where he entered or exited the house from, aside from a window that was partially unlocked, but it didn't seem to have been opened recently. What's really disturbing is knowing that he was likely the cause of the creaking floorboards for the last several days in the middle of the night, meaning he was inside walking around the house while we were sleeping. Even more creepy is trying to figure out why he was in Jason's room, just sitting on his bed and seemingly waiting for something. Interestingly, in the last few days, that was the one day that Jason had off and that I worked, meaning Jason would be alone pretty much all evening. This makes me think the unknown man somehow knew this and was waiting to catch Jason off guard while he was alone. This would explain why the man was in Jason's room waiting, and why he didn't do anything to me. But fortunately, Jason happened to go hang out with a friend for most of the night. Whatever the case, we probably won't ever know the man's true intentions, unless it's too late.